Welcome back to Talking Papers Faceless Podcast, everybody.
Yeah, welcome back.
This is Shaquille.
And I'm Axa.
We're here every Monday and Thursday for a deep dive into some fascinating topics.
Absolutely.
And today we're going to be unpacking David Icke's book, The Biggest Secret.
Ooh, okay.
This deep dive will explore some of the central ideas presented in this work, based entirely on the content within its pages.
Right, so like taking a deep dive into this book and seeing what Icke is trying to tell us.
Exactly. We're going to be sticking completely to the source material and just seeing what we find in there.
Okay, sounds good.
So one of the most central ideas in the book is this concept of the Brotherhood agenda.
I've heard of that before.
Yeah, it's just this long-standing plan, he claims, for centralized control of the planet.
Oh, wow, so like a one-world government type thing?
Yeah, exactly. And it's not like a new thing. He says it's been unfolding for millennia, piece by piece.
Oh, wow, that's a really long time.
Yeah, and so he argues that key institutions that we think of as just normal parts of society, like government, banking, business, the military, even the media.
Right, yeah.
He claims they're not just infiltrated by this force, but they were actually created by this force.
Okay, so it's not just like they're pulling the strings behind the scenes, but they actually like built these things from the ground up.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what he's arguing, that these things were built with this agenda in mind from the very start.
That's pretty wild.
Yeah, and so the driving force behind all of this, as Icke describes it, is this bloodline hierarchy that's operating from the shadows.
Oh, okay, like secret families and stuff?
Yeah, exactly. And they pass down this control across generations.
Right, like a dynasty.
Yeah, exactly. And he says that the children in these families are basically indoctrinated from birth.
Wow, so they're like groomed for this their whole lives.
Yeah, he says they're taught the agenda, the methods of manipulation, all of it.
That's pretty intense.
Yeah, he paints a pretty chilling picture of them. He says they're intellectually very sharp, but they lack compassion.
Oh, so they're like smart but heartless?
Yeah, basically, and they have this just arrogant belief that they're the ones who have the right to rule.
Like a god complex or something.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And so he actually names some of these bloodlines that he claims are involved.
Oh, really? Who does he name?
Well, he mentions the British House of Windsor, of course.
Oh, yeah, the royal family.
Yeah, and then he also mentions the Rothschilds.
Right. I've heard that name before.
Yeah, they're like a big banking family.
Okay, so like the people who control the money.
Yeah, supposedly. And then he also talks about other European royalty and aristocracy,
Yeah.
the Rockefellers in the U.S.
Right. Big names.
And this group called the Eastern Establishment in the United States.
I'm not as familiar with that one.
It's kind of a shadowy group, not very well defined, but he claims they're a big part of this.
Okay, so it's like this network of powerful families all over the world.
Yeah, that's his claim. And he does acknowledge that even within the Brotherhood, there's internal strife and competition.
Oh, really? So it's not like they're all just getting along.
Yeah, he describes it as a gang of bank robbers arguing over the spoils.
So they're all fighting amongst themselves even while they're trying to control everything?
Yeah, but he says that when the overall agenda is threatened, they all unite.
Oh, so they put their differences aside when it really counts.
Exactly. He says that's what makes them so effective. They can be fighting each other one minute and then team up the next if they feel like their power is being challenged.
That's a good strategy.
Yeah, it definitely seems to have worked for them so far, according to Icke.
Right, if you believe all this.
Exactly. And so then he gets into this really interesting discussion of ancient cataclysms and cycles.
Okay, like what kind of cataclysms?
Well, he talks about significant earth upheavals that have happened in the past, and he hints at solar system-wide involvement in these.
Oh, so not just like earthquakes and volcanoes, but like something bigger.
Yeah, he suggests that these events might have been influenced by planetary movements or even other cosmic forces.
That's pretty out there.
It is, but he cites some interesting evidence. He mentions the Sumerian tablets.
Oh, yeah, those are like ancient texts, right?
Exactly, and they describe this major cataclysm around 11,000 BC.
Okay, and what supposedly happened then?
Well, Icke claims that this cataclysm destroyed advanced civilizations that existed during a golden age.
Oh, wow, so there were like advanced civilizations before our current one.
That's what he's suggesting. And he says they were wiped out by this huge cataclysm.
That's kind of like the Atlantis story.
Yeah, there are definitely some similarities there, the idea of a lost civilization that was more advanced than ours.
Right.
And so he links this cataclysm to a 13,000-year cycle that's related to the Earth's tilt.
Okay, so like the way the Earth is tilted on its axis.
Exactly. And he says that this tilt causes the Earth to move towards and away from a black sun.
The black sun, what's that?
That's how he refers to the galactic center.
Oh, okay, like the center of the Milky Way galaxy.
Yeah, and he believes that this cycle, this 13,000-year cycle, is tied to periods of positive light and darkness that affect global energy.
So like when the Earth is tilted towards the galactic center, it's a time of positive energy, and when it's tilted away, it's a time of darkness.
Exactly. And he claims that the end of the Golden Age, this advanced civilization, coincided with the start of a 13,000-year cycle of darkness.
Oh, wow. So we've been in this darkness for like 11,000 years.
That's what he's saying, but he also claims that we're now nearing the end of this cycle.
Oh, so we're about to come out of the darkness.
Yeah, he believes that we're moving into a new era of positive light, and he says this is going to lead to a rapid global spiritual awakening.
So things are going to get a lot better.
That's what he's suggesting. Yeah, it's a pretty optimistic view of the future.
It is, but I mean, 13,000 years of darkness, that's a long time.
It is, yeah. It makes you wonder what kind of world we might be moving into if this is true.
Yeah, for sure.
And he also mentions this research by Brian Desborough.
Who's that?
He's a researcher who's written about ancient cataclysms. And he suggests that there was another major cataclysm around 4800 BC.
Okay, so another one even more recently than the 11,000 BC one.
Yeah, and he says this one involved Jupiter and another planet.
Oh, wow. So like a planetary collision?
Not necessarily a direct collision, but he suggests that their gravitational interaction caused some major disruptions.
Okay, and what kind of disruptions?
Well, he claims that this event potentially created the asteroid belt.
Wow, the asteroid belt. That's a huge field of asteroids between Mars and Jupiter.
Exactly. And he also suggests that it might have even created Venus.
Venus, like the planet Venus.
Yeah, he thinks that Venus might have been formed as a result of this cataclysm.
That's a pretty bold claim.
It is, yeah. And then he says that this event caused massive devastation on Earth in the form of tidal waves.
Oh, wow. So like global tsunamis?
Yeah, basically. And he thinks that this is what led to a lot of the flood myths that we find in different cultures around the world.
Okay, so like the story of Noah's Ark and stuff like that.
Exactly. He sees those as being based on this real event that happened thousands of years ago.
That's an interesting take on those stories.
Yeah, and it kind of makes you wonder how many other ancient myths might be based on real events that we've just forgotten about.
Right, for sure. I mean, our history books only tell us so much.
Exactly. And Icke is suggesting that there's a whole lot more to the story than we're typically taught.
Okay, so let's dig into some of these other things that he talks about. What else is in this book?
Well, this is where things start to get really out there, I guess you could say.
Out there how?
He starts talking about extraterrestrial influence and this concept of the serpent race.
The serpent race, what's that?
Well, he's basically talking about reptilian beings, reptilian humanoids.
Reptilian humanoids, like lizard people.
Yeah, basically. And he claims that they've been on Earth for a very long time alongside humans.
Wow, so like we've been coexisting with lizard people this whole time.
That's what he's suggesting, yeah. And he connects them to the Anunnaki.
The Anunnaki. Who are they?
They're the gods from ancient Sumerian mythology.
Okay, so he's saying that the Anunnaki were actually reptilian beings.
Yeah, and he points to the fact that the Sumerians called them the serpent race.
I never heard that before.
Yeah, it's not really something that's talked about a lot in mainstream history books.
Right, right.
But Icke claims that this is the truth that's been hidden from us. And he even suggests that the ancient wars of the gods that we read about in mythology might actually represent conflicts between different extraterrestrial groups or even factions of the Anunnaki themselves.
So like Star Wars, but with lizard people.
Kinda, yeah. He's basically saying that these ancient myths were based on real events, real wars that were happening between these different extraterrestrial factions.
Wow, that's a pretty big leap.
It is, yeah. But he presents a lot of evidence to support his claims.
What kind of evidence?
Well, he brings in modern accounts of people claiming to see humanoid reptilians.
Oh, wow. So like people are seeing these lizard people today.
Yeah, he has numerous stories in the book of people who claim to have seen these beings, and he describes them in detail. They have lizard-like features, cold-blooded characteristics, they're highly intelligent, they have advanced technology.
That's pretty freaky.
It is, yeah. But he also says that they lack emotional sensitivity, they struggle to express love.
Oh, so they're like cold and calculated.
Yeah, and he actually draws a link between this and the behavior that he attributes to the modern-day Brotherhood.
Okay, so he's saying that the people who are controlling the world, these elite bloodlines, are acting like these reptilian beings.
Yeah, he sees a lot of parallels between their behavior, their lack of compassion, their ruthlessness, and the way that these reptilian beings are described.
That's an interesting connection.
Yeah, it is. And He doesn't just rely on these modern accounts. He also points to a whole bunch of examples of serpent imagery and reptile-like gods in ancient cultures all over the world.
Like what?
Well, he mentions the Ubaid culture, which is a very ancient culture in Mesopotamia, and they had these lizard figurines.
Okay, so they were already depicting lizard people back then.
Yeah, and then he talks about Quetzalcoatl in Central America, the feathered serpent god.
Right, I've heard of that one.
And then there's the Hopi god Baholenkonga, which is a serpent god.
Okay, so lots of serpent gods.
Yeah, all over the world, he talks about the Native American serpent mounds, the Nagas in East India, which are like serpent deities, Egypt's Neph, which was a serpent god, Phoenicia's Agatha demon, Voodoo's Dambalawidu, the Hebrew Naghustan, which was a bronze serpent on a pole, and even the British god Hu, from which he claims the word human derives.
Wow, that's a lot of examples.
It is, yeah. He's basically saying that this serpent imagery is everywhere in ancient cultures.
And he's saying that it's all connected to this real serpent race that's been influencing humanity.
Exactly, and he even mentions the winged disc symbol of the Sumerians.
Oh, yeah, I've seen that before.
Yeah, it's often depicted with two serpents.
Okay, so even more serpent imagery.
Yeah, and he says that this is all evidence that the serpent, the reptilian influence, has been here for a very long time.
Okay, so let's say that he's right and that these reptilian beings are real. What does he say they're doing today? Like, how are they influencing the world?
Well, he gets into this idea of reptilians in positions of power today.
Okay, so like lizard people running the world.
Yeah, basically he mentions experiences of individuals who claim to see reptiles inside or around the bodies of leading world politicians and the elite.
Oh, so like they can shapeshift?
Yeah, that's what some people claim, and he suggests that this might be happening in a lower fourth dimension.
Fourth dimension, like what does that even mean?
Well, he's basically saying that there might be other dimensions of reality that we can't normally perceive.
Okay, so like a parallel universe or something?
Kinda, yeah, but not necessarily a whole separate universe, just a different dimension of reality.
Okay, and he's saying that these reptilian beings can operate in this fourth dimension and then somehow project themselves into our dimension.
Yeah, he says they can either manifest briefly in our dimension or they can possess human beings.
Possess human beings, like take over their bodies.
Yeah, and he says that some people are more susceptible to this possession than others, particularly people who are in positions of power.
Like politicians and CEOs and stuff.
Exactly. And he suggests that these possessed individuals might be unknowingly pushing forward the agenda through the reptilians' thoughts.
So they're like puppets.
Yeah, in a way, he's basically saying that the people who we think are in control might not actually be in control.
That's a pretty scary thought.
It is, yeah. And he gets into some even more startling allegations about reptilian involvement in underground bases.
Underground bases, like secret military bases.
Yeah, and he mentions the one that's supposedly beneath Denver Airport.
Oh, yeah, I've heard about that. That there's like a whole underground city under Denver Airport.
Yeah, there are lots of rumors about that, and Icke claims that it's actually controlled by reptilians.
Okay, and what are they doing down there?
Well, there are claims of human slaves being held down there and controlled by reptilians.
Human slaves, that's awful.
Yeah, it's a very disturbing claim. And he brings in this guy named Phil Schneider.
Who's he?
He was a geologist who claimed to have worked on these deep underground bases.
Okay, so he's like a whistleblower.
Yeah, kinda. He started talking about these bases in the early 90s. And he claimed that they were connected to Denver Airport, Area 51, and another base called Dulce.
Dulce? Where's that?
It's in New Mexico. And he claimed that all of these bases were involved in all sorts of shady stuff, including genetic experiments, advanced weapons development, and contact with extraterrestrials.
Wow, so like a real X-Files situation.
Yeah, and he said that he had seen reptilian beings at Dulce and that they had attacked him.
They attacked him? What happened?
Well, he claimed that they shot him with some kind of weapon that gave him cancer.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and he died a few years later under mysterious circumstances.
That does sound suspicious.
It does, yeah. And Icke sees this as evidence that Schneider was telling the truth and that the government was trying to silence him.
Okay, so he's basically saying that there's this whole underground world that we don't know about, controlled by reptilians, and that the government is covering it all up.
Yeah, that's a big part of his theory.
It's a lot to take in.
It is, yeah, and there's a lot more where that came from.
Okay, so what else does he talk about?
Well, he gets into this whole discussion of the divine right of kings.
Right, like the idea that kings are chosen by God.
Yeah, and he connects that to the ancient Sumerian myths about the Nephilim and the Watchers.
Who are they?
They're these beings that are described in the Bible and in other ancient texts.
Okay.
And they're said to have been the offspring of angels and human women.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And Icke claims that they were actually reptilian humanoids.
So, like, the serpent race again?
Exactly. And he says that they had specific physical characteristics that were required for leadership in ancient times.
Oh, really? Like what?
Well, he doesn't get too specific, but he suggests that these characteristics were somehow related to their reptilian nature.
Okay, so like maybe they had scales or something?
Yeah, maybe. And he even connects the British title Sir to this.
Sir, like how?
He claims that it might have originated from an ancient snake goddess.
Hmm, that's an interesting connection.
It is, yeah. And he brings up the Sumerian gods in Lil and Enki again.
Right, those serpent gods.
Yeah, and he points out that, and Lil's name means splendid serpent.
Okay, so more serpent symbolism.
Yeah, and then Enki is symbolized by the caduceus, which is that staff with two entwined serpents.
Right, I've seen that before.
Yeah, it's a very ancient symbol, and it claims that it's all connected to this reptilian influence.
Okay, so it seems like he's finding serpent symbolism everywhere.
He is, yeah. He's basically saying that it's all around us if we just know how to look for it.
Okay, and what does he say about all of this secret knowledge? Like, who has it, and how are they keeping it hidden?
Well, he gets into this whole discussion of secret societies.
Oh, yeah, like the Illuminati and stuff.
Yeah, and he talks about this group called the Babylonian Brotherhood.
The Babylonian Brotherhood, I haven't heard of that one.
Yeah, he believes that they're the ones who are behind all of this.
Okay, and who are they?
He claims that they're the reptilian-human hybrids who were formerly in Atlantis.
Oh, wow, so they survived the destruction of Atlantis.
Yep. That's what he's saying, and he believes that they've been operating through a global network of secret societies ever since.
Okay, so they're like the puppet masters.
Yeah, exactly, and he says that this network coordinates the agenda across borders and between seemingly unconnected institutions.
So, like, they're pulling the strings of everything.
That's his claim. Yeah, and he says that they possess all this advanced knowledge.
What kind of knowledge?
He mentions things like the sun's power, magnetics of the mind, planetary influences, manipulation of time, consciousness, energy, and weather.
Wow, that's like superpowers.
It is, yeah, and he claims that they're using this knowledge to control humanity.
Okay, so how are they doing that?
Well, he says that they've created public institutions like religions and political parties in order to suppress this advanced knowledge.
So they're like using these institutions to keep us in the dark.
Exactly. He sees them as tools of control, and he specifically mentions the Inquisition as an example of this suppression.
The Inquisition, that was like a religious court that persecuted heretics.
Yeah, and Icke sees it as an attempt to suppress anyone who possessed knowledge that threatened the power of the church.
Okay, so he's saying that the church was working with these secret societies.
That's his claim. Yeah, and he's particularly critical of Christianity.
Oh, really? How so?
He describes it as recycled paganism.
Recycled paganism, what does that mean?
Well, he's basically saying that a lot of Christian beliefs and practices were borrowed from earlier pagan religions.
Okay, so like the idea that Christmas was originally a pagan holiday.
Yeah, that kind of thing. And he says that this was done deliberately in order to remove vital knowledge from the public domain.
So they took the pagan beliefs, stripped them of their true meaning, and turned them into Christianity.
Yeah, that's his theory. And he points to the destruction or removal of ancient texts and records by Christianity and other religions as evidence of this.
Right, like the burning of the Library of Alexandria.
Exactly. He sees those as deliberate acts of suppression.
That's pretty dark.
It is, yeah. And he doesn't just stop with Christianity. He goes on to talk about the Aryan origins of religion.
Okay, so like the Aryan race.
Yeah, and he identifies the Caucasus Mountains as a significant point of origin.
The Caucasus Mountains, that's like in Eurasia.
Yeah, and he points out that white people in North America are called Caucasian.
Right, right.
And he claims that an Aryan race from the Caucasus moved into India around 1550 BC.
Okay, so like a migration.
Yeah, and he says that they created Hinduism and introduced Sanskrit and the Vedas.
The Vedas, those are like ancient Hindu scriptures.
Exactly. And he then connects this same Aryan race to settlements in Sumer, Babylon, Egypt, and Asia Minor.
Wow, so they were all over the place.
Yeah, he's basically saying that they spread their culture and their religion throughout the ancient world.
Okay, and what does he say about their religion?
Well, he claims that all the major religions share the same source, this Aryan race.
So like Christianity, Judaism, Islam, Hinduism, they all came from the same place.
That's his theory, yeah. And he links it to these reptile-human bloodlines again.
Oh, so the Aryans were also reptilian hybrids.
He suggests that they might have been, yeah, and he even claims that the Jewish race also originated in the Caucasus region.
Oh, really? Not in Israel?
He says that they might have come from a group called the Khazars.
The Khazars? Who are they?
They were a Turkic people who lived in that region.
Okay.
And he names the Rothschild family as one of these bloodlines.
The Rothschilds again.
Yeah, he sees them as being a key part of this whole thing.
Okay, so it seems like he's tying all these different threads together. Ancient cataclysms, reptilian beings, secret societies, bloodlines. It's a lot.
It is, yeah. And he doesn't shy away from controversial topics either.
What do you mean?
Well, he also discusses some of the racist statements that are found in religious texts, specifically in the Talmud and the Old Testament.
Oh, okay, that's a sensitive topic.
It is, yeah. And he's very careful to point out that these statements weren't written by Jewish people as a whole, but by the Levites.
The Levites, who are the Lamb?
They were the priestly tribe in ancient Israel.
Okay.
And Icke claims that they represented the priestly bloodlines of the reptilians and the Babylonian Brotherhood.
So he's saying that they were part of this secret society.
Yeah, and he says that blaming the Jews for these statements is a deliberate tactic of the Brotherhood to divide and rule.
Right, like create conflict between different groups.
Exactly, and he praises people like Israel Shahak, who have spoken out against the racism in these texts.
Israel Shahak, who's that?
He was a Holocaust survivor who became a professor, and he wrote a lot about the racism in Jewish law.
Okay, so he was like a critic from within the Jewish community.
Yeah, and Icke sees him as someone who was very courageous for speaking out against these things.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's a very nuanced take on a very sensitive topic.
For sure, it sounds like this book really covers a lot of ground.
It does, yeah, and we're just scratching the surface here.
Okay, so what else is there?
Well, he goes on to talk about ancient mystery schools and how they connect to the origins of religion.
Okay, like secret societies again?
Kinda, yeah, but he focuses on the worship of the sun in these schools.
Sun worship.
Yeah, and he mentions Mithra as a key figure.
Mithra, who's that?
He was a Persian god who was also worshipped in the Roman Empire.
Okay.
And he's often depicted as a winged lion, which is a symbol of the sun.
Okay, so more sun symbolism.
Yeah, and it claims that Mithraic rituals were very similar to Freemasonry.
Oh, really? How so?
Well, he mentions things like the lion grip, which is a handshake used by Freemasons,
Okay.
and a forehead mark, which was also used in Mithraic rituals, and crown symbolism, and a meal of bread and wine.
That does sound similar.
Yeah, and he also points out that Mithra was a son of God, who died to save humanity, and was visited by wise men with gifts.
Oh, wow, that's just like the Jesus story.
Exactly. And he even mentions accounts of Plato's teacher Socrates, which have similar elements.
That is interesting.
Yeah, and he presents Christianity as basically a pagan sun and astrology religion.
A sun and astrology religion.
Yeah, he says that it's just a rehashing of older pagan beliefs.
And he says that Christianity is condemning itself because it's based on paganism.
Yeah, he finds that to be quite ironic.
It is, yeah.
And he even points out that the Vatican is located on a former sacred site of Mithra.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so he's basically saying that the church was built on top of a pagan temple.
Wow, that's a pretty bold claim.
It is, yeah, and he gives a bunch of examples of the origins of Christian figures and dates in pre-Christian pagan traditions.
Like what?
Well, he mentions Tammuz, who's a Babylonian god.
Oh.
And he says that Tammuz was born on December 24th.
Oh, wow. So like Jesus.
Exactly. He's basically saying that the story of Jesus was based on the story of Tammuz.
That's pretty wild.
Yeah, it is. And he goes on to talk about the Nazarites or Nazarenes.
Who are they?
Well, he presents them as a secret society that linked the Old and New Testaments.
Okay, so like a bridge between the two.
Yeah, and he claims that figures like Moses, Samson, Jesus, James, and John the Baptist were all members.
Wow, so like a really important group.
Yeah, and he even says that St. Paul was a member.
St. Paul the Apostle.
Yeah, he's basically saying that Christianity was founded by a secret society.
That's pretty different from what they teach in Sunday school.
It is, yeah. And he says that the term Nazarene didn't refer to the town of Nazareth.
Oh, really? What did it refer to?
He claims that it was the name of this secret society.
Okay, so like the Nazarenes were a secret group, not people from Nazareth.
Exactly, and he says that Nazareth didn't even exist at that time.
Wow, that's a pretty controversial claim.
It is, yeah, and he connects the Essenes to this, too.
The Essenes, they were like a Jewish sect, right?
Yeah, and he sees them as being another offshoot of this same group.
Okay, so like the Nazarenes, the Essenes, they were all connected.
Yeah, and he also points out that the Essenes wore white, while the Nazarenes wore black.
Black, like the Babylonian Brotherhood.
Exactly. He says that black was a significant color for them.
Okay, and why is that?
He says it's associated with authority and death.
That's kind of creepy.
It is, yeah, and he even links the mortarboard, the hat that people wear at graduation ceremonies.
Right, right.
He says that it's a symbol of the Babylonian Brotherhood.
Oh, really? How so?
He says it represents the circle and square of Freemasonry.
That's an interesting connection.
Yeah, he's basically saying that these symbols are all around us.
Okay, so what does he say about the creation of Christianity itself? Like, if it wasn't founded by Jesus and his disciples, then who created it?
Well, he claims that the Jesus story and Christianity as a whole were inventions of Roman emperors.
Roman emperors, so like the people who ruled the Roman Empire?
Yeah, and he says that they were part of the Babylonian Brotherhood.
Okay, so these emperors were in on the conspiracy.
Yeah, he specifically mentions the Piso family.
The Piso family, who are they?
They were a Roman family that was very influential during the time of Jesus.
Okay.
And Icke claims that they were the ones who actually created the Jesus story.
Wow, so Jesus was like a fictional character?
That's what he's suggesting, yeah. And he says that they did this in order to create a religion that would control the masses.
So Christianity was like a tool of control.
Exactly. And he says that the Roman Church was in on it too.
The Roman Church, like the Catholic Church?
Yeah. He sees the Church as being complicit in this whole scheme.
That's a pretty big accusation.
It is, yeah. And he calls Rome the New Babylon.
The New Babylon, what does that mean?
Well, Babylon was an ancient city that was known for its wickedness and its idolatry.
Okay.
And Icke is basically saying that Rome became the new center of evil after the fall of Babylon. And he says that Christianity was specifically designed to entrap the human mind.
Entrap the human mind? How so?
Well, he says that it's full of contradictions and illogical beliefs.
Okay.
And he claims that these were put there deliberately to keep people confused and submissive.
So like a form of mental manipulation.
Exactly. And he says that the church hierarchy is aware of all of this.
They know that Christianity is a lie.
That's what he's claiming, yeah. And he points to things like the Turin Shroud as examples of cynical lies that are used to perpetuate the propaganda.
The Turin Shroud, that's supposedly the burial cloth of Jesus.
Yeah, and Icke believes that it's a fake.
Okay, so he's saying that they're using fake relics to trick people.
Yeah, and he also mentions the Roman College of Architects. Expert speaker.